You ever take a moment just to reflect? We'll do a little reflection today. Welcome to New Ham Basics. I'm your host, Greg, KD9ZRO. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to honor the day that today is. At the time of recording, it's Father's Day 2024. I'm sitting here with my glass of homemade iced tea. Ignore the cup, it's just a cup. Not a product placement. Homemade iced tea. And I started reflecting on a couple of interesting objects that I was giving its Father's Day gifts. Sometimes we just don't take the time that we need to take. We always show our appreciation when our children or stepchildren give us gifts for Father's Day to show their appreciation for our role in their lives. But we often don't actually take the time to fully appreciate. And I got a couple today that you really do have to think about and take the time to understand, even if you don't understand it in the same way that the child did. You've really got to take the time to understand and find a meaning in it other than, oh, my kid gave this to me for Father's Day. It's kind of cool, but I don't know what it's for. I don't know what it means. You got to get beyond that. One of those things is this unassuming little cube here. And another, just a painted rock. You can see it. It says kind on it. And this one here, I actually found it a couple of days ago and didn't realize it was for me. You can see it's pretty unassuming. They put a couple stickers on some of the sides, and somebody used a wood burner and wood burnt Dad in it. But how many of you have saw the movie? Excuse me, I got sweat in my eye. How many of you saw the movie Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium? And maybe you remember the big spinning lacquer finished plain cube of a hunk of wood that he called the Congreve cube. Now that Congreve cube symbolized several things: freedom, free thinking, wisdom, and creativity. And let's face it, you got to have a lot of wisdom. We've got to be free thinking. Sometimes we've got to be pretty creative to fulfill the role of that word right there. So, when that thought crossed my mind, I saw it sitting, and all I could see was these two blank sides when I saw it. And I picked it up. It was on the console of the car. I don't drive, I'm not allowed to. And I picked it up out of the console, and I didn't really look at it. I just showed it back to the kids. I said, look, it's a Congreve cube. Of course, they looked at me like I was crazy because they had no idea what I was talking about. Although they saw the movie just as many times as I have. And then I got to thinking about what it meant. If I could look at this as the Congreve cube, what does it mean? Well, if you remember in the movie, the store clerk that he wanted to give his store to was a struggling musician, a pianist to be exact. And she kept reaching a certain point in her song, and then she'd stumble. And Mr. Megorium kind of fulfilled this role in her life. And so she'd stumble. And towards the end of his life, which was what the whole movie was about, but towards the end of his life, he gave her this cube. And she looked at him like he was crazy. And he told her it's a Congreve cube. And again, she looked at him like he was crazy and even questioned, what's a Congreve cube? This is when he explained the meaning of it to her, what it symbolized for him. And he told her, just take it, set it someplace you'll see it. And eventually, its power, as he called it, will come to you. And so she's got it sitting on her piano where she can see it. She's practicing. She keeps reaching that point, or she fails. She's doing her own original piece. She reaches that point where she just can't figure out how to continue the composure, but she's not done with it. And she's not at a point where she can bring it to a closure either. And she glances up and she notices that cube sitting there. And she stares at it for a few seconds, takes a pause. She reaches up, she grabs it, she starts inspecting it and thinking. And we don't know what she's thinking because they don't tell us what she's thinking, but she's looking at it, she's thinking, she's examining it, trying to figure out what's so special about it. And it was like somebody turned on a light switch. And she understood all of a sudden. All of a sudden she knew where she should go, what she should do next. So she sets it down just exactly where it was, and she starts playing all over again, right from the beginning of her composition. And she reaches that point, and she doesn't even realize she reached that point. She reaches that point and she just continues to play. Plays out this beautiful melody that completes the song. And then after she's done writing these new notes, she takes a minute and she looks at the cube again, and she realizes that by focusing on the intricate details of this cube and trying to figure out what was so special about it, she calmed her mind enough to focus on the song she was composing. Got a little wind here, as you can tell. I'm sitting out in front of the evergreen. But she realizes that by focusing on the intricate details of this unassuming cube, and that cube was a lot bigger, it was probably at least twice the size of mine, but she focused on that cube and its intricate details, and it allowed her to slow her mind down and focus on the musical piece she was composing and finish it. And then, of course, shortly after, I think this actually took place after Mr. Megorian passed, or left, as he called it. But she goes into the store, and she's kind of overwhelmed by what was left behind, because if you saw the movie, the store kind of begins to decay, as Mr. Megorian put it, kind of in retaliation to his departure. So the store is kind of in pretty bad shape when she goes back into it, and she's carrying this cube in her purse. And she goes in and she's just kind of looking around the store, kind of trying to decide if she's going to do anything with it. And at some point she had already decided to sell it. Well, she's got somebody there looking to buy the store, and it's still fully stocked as it was when Mr. Megorian was still running the store. But it looks terrible. And she puts the cube down, and the accountant, I can't remember exactly what Mr. Megorian called him, but the little boy, mutant, that's what it was. Little boy that was kind of an icon in the store, then talking to the mutant, as they called him. And she tries to get mutant to understand the point of the cube, because he had asked about it. And she takes it out of her purse and she sits it on the counter, and they're talking about it, and all of a sudden the cube levitates and spins and does all its craziness. And she just allowed it to do its work and brought the store back to life. We all need, especially as fathers, we need a concrete cube in our lives. So to me, it's interesting that although they may not have been thinking it when they come up with this as a gift, I mean, come on, kids come up with some pretty creative gifts, and sometimes we don't understand. Maybe they don't even understand. They just assign a meaning to it and hope we're going to get it. But, we all need a concrete cube in our lives to remind us that anything's possible. We're creative enough, we're free thinking enough, and we're willing to face the struggle and overcome it. Which brings us to this gift. An unassuming little rock. Now we don't know what kind of rock it is. It's a painted rock, so I'd have to crack it. I'd have to break it or start stripping some of the paint off of it to be able to tell you what kind of rock it is. But bringing forth the fact that it's a rock reminds us that our role is to be the rock of strength for our children. And this one simple word here reminds us that we should be kind while we're doing it. Now, yes, sometimes we have to be as hard as this rock and correct and sometimes discipline our kids. We can't always be kind. And even, hopefully, even when we have to be hard and corrective and disciplinary, we manage to do it in a kind way, as kindly as possible. But we're to be the rock. We're to be a solid foundation for our children. And I can bring forth a couple of dad joke style comments that were made by our associate pastor, youth pastor. Reminds us to be bolder. We got to be bolder than our children, because they're going to be pretty bold, and sometimes we're going to have to step up to the plate and defend them, or change their mind about something, teach them something. Remember, our kids are pretty bold. We've got to be a little bolder than they are to get them out of those bad situations, correct those errors, correct that wrong thinking. So we got to be bolder. And then often we as fathers and our kids take our role for granted. Granted, as he said. Take our role for granted. And we shouldn't. The reason we shouldn't is because it's a gift. Not everyone gets the privilege that we have, and many fail. Personally, I've failed at it. Not many get this privilege, so we shouldn't take it for granted. When I was doing sermons, and I hope to one day get back into it. I do have another channel for that, but there's some spiritual issue. There were some spiritual issues going on that made me feel I wasn't fit to fill that role at the time. Hopefully, I can get back to it. But as I said in one of those messages, being a father is one of the greatest honors that my God, and for some of you, our God, can bestow on us. Like me being a Christian, and many other Christians out there, if you happen to be a Christian watching, our God is the Father of all creation. And to give us the privilege of taking on the title of Father here on earth, that's the greatest honor he can give us. He's entrusting us to care for one of his creations. Even though he could do it all on his own, he's entrusting us to care for one of his creations. Just like he trusted their mother to bring his creation into earth. I mean, he could have, back on March 4th, 1975, he could have just spoke the words. He could have spoke the words, I want Greg Chappell Jr. to exist, and boom, there I am. He could have made that happen without a mother. He could have made that happen without a father. He could have brought me up all on his own without a mother or father. But he trusted our parents to bring us into the world and take care of us and provide for us and teach us and train us. So as fathers, we shouldn't take our role for granted. And I got to thinking about this little rock here. It's a river stone. I don't know if you can see. It's a river stone. You can tell by how smooth it is. There's nothing rough about it. river stones are formed and polished and smoothed by something as gentle as water. Now, yes, occasionally the raging torrent comes along and may move that stone, but this stone, this one little stone, is the strongest piece of a crumbling mountain. If you actually think about it, that little stone right there, this little painted rock that says kind on it, is the strongest piece of a crumbling mountain. So when we're given the honor and privilege of being fathers, we're being deemed as strong. In one way or another, we're being deemed as strong enough to handle the pressure of raising a child. And, children are a lot like water. They test us in the beginning. They cause us to fall off that mountain with the initial learning how to do it and their needs as infants. And as they get older, they become gentle and they become the pleasure of our lives. But occasionally, when they get a little bit older and become teenagers and move into young adulthood, there's going to be those raging torrents. Those raging torrents are going to try to move our stone. And we may lose a little piece here and there. Maybe an argument that erodes away at the relationship, but only for a little while. Because eventually our rock will stop tumbling and it'll settle into another somewhat safe place. And that gentle current will start polishing away that scar. Remember, this little rock started as an entire mountain. And things happened that shook this little rock from that mountain and damaged this little rock. And it found a nice little secure place in a quiet little stream. And that gentle stream, a gentle flow of the water, started eroding and erasing the damage, creating a nice, smooth, probably underneath this paint, very beautiful rock. Excuse me, we got a vehicle driving by. Okay. But underneath this paint is probably a naturally beautiful little rock. Who knows, it may just be a common, everyday little piece of slate. I doubt it. I don't see any layers. But it could just be common, everyday rock that you find just about anywhere, whether it be in a river or not. But it became this beautiful rock just by natural polishing and natural erosion, which is what happens to us. We think we're going to be a certain person, and we built our life on being that person. And then this tree's the mountain. We've built our life on being a certain person. Okay, we want to be a certain person, and we become a father, and it shakes us away from that mountain that we thought we were going to be. And we tumble and we fall and we make our mistakes and we get damaged and scarred. And then we settle in and we get comfortable with it. And it starts polishing us and taking away those scars. There's still a few blemishes on this little rock, but it starts taking away our scars and polishing us up and making us beautiful. And this, don't get me wrong, it's just a simple black rock with a white spot and some blue lettering. But diving into the meaning of something like this makes it just as beautiful painted as it was lying in that river underneath that water, that crystal clear water glistening over it. So, this was a little off base, but for those of you fathers out there and stepfathers, mine may not see this video, but my stepfather was a wonderful man. He was definitely the man he didn't have to be when it came to raising me. And that's not to take anything away from my dad. I did get the opportunity to get to know my dad, and we do have a fairly good relationship. It's pretty rocky, and sometimes we have to get creative to maintain that relationship. but we've got a pretty good relationship. So I don't want to take anything away from him, but I do want to give something to you stepfathers out there. So to all you dads out there, even some of you that have failed and gotten the opportunity to try again, whether it be with the children you failed with or others, and you stepfathers out there who raised those children that had fathers that failed or just weren't able to be around, which I think was part of the case with me. I think more than failure was the inability to be around. My dad was a military man, and I don't want to make any assumptions or bring out anything that I know that would sound incorrect. So, I'm just going to say whatever the relationship was between my mother and him. I'm not even going to venture guesses into that, although I have been explained some of it by all three, him, my mother, and my stepdad, and all their stories pretty much line up. So I'm not going to make any allegations, but dads, once failing dads and stepdads, this is for you. Take the time to appreciate these simple little gifts, because you may not understand the meaning that your children put behind it when they give you these gifts. They may have saw this, and in all honesty, they may have saw this and saw the fact that it says dad, and the oldest might have said, you know what, dad used to build things. Me and dad used to build pole barns together. We used to build decks together. We used to do projects together, and we worked with wood a lot. Dad would probably like this. That's probably all that was into this, as far as the kids are concerned. But in a moment of inspiration, I saw something deeper than that. And these little rocks here, now let me come clean here. These little rocks here didn't actually come from our kids. Now, our kids helped create them. They didn't actually come from our kids. They came from all of the children at our church. And some of them, this may be one of them, some of them were completed by the teachers and adults. But rather than seeing a painted rock that says that some child, whether it be mine or another, some child in that church thinks I'm kind, I took a moment and reflected on it and found a deeper meaning. And these kids, they were probably told a Bible story behind it, probably similar to what I've said. And they were told to do this project because a teacher thought, it's simple, something the kids can do, and parents love things that kids make for them. So that's probably what went into the thought. Was teacher gave us told us a story about rocks and dads, and gave us this idea, and we did this. That's probably what went into it. But a little reflection on it, and you find a deeper meaning. Just like this unassuming block of wood, a little reflection, you find a deeper meaning. Some gifts are going to be obvious. My kids could have bought me a radio. I would have known exactly why. They could have bought me painting supplies. I would have known exactly why. Could have bought me tools. There's several things my kids could have done for me, and I would have known exactly what they were thinking when they did it. But an unassuming cube just says dad, and has a few stickers that represent our church, and a rock from a church with a simple word on it can have so much more meaning than a tie or a tool or a radio or painting supplies or whatever it is you're into. If you just take the time, just like you have to do with your children, to stay patient with them and be that rock and be creative. Take the time, be patient, and whether it's the meaning they were thinking when they came up with that gift, you will find a meaning. Maybe the meaning that you find in it is deeper than the meaning they found in it. But it's worth it to take the time and think about it. So, to all you dads and stepdads out there, happy Father's Day. Enjoy your children.